Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a Time to Heal podcast. I'm Dr. Rani Samuel, and today I want to talk to you about where your story began. Actually, I'm going to do a series of conversations about womb trauma, childhood trauma, and how this impacts you in the later stages of your life and how you actually might heal from that. So today's episode is titled, Where Does Your Story Begin? Many of us as children, we loved stories. I don't know about you, but it was something I really looked forward to. And for me, reading was a very big part and is a big part of my life. And if you remember, stories would often begin as once upon a time, or long, long ago, or in the beginning. And if we considered your story in the beginning, where was your beginning? As I followed a journey through academia, psychology, and writing, it meant that I was fully immersed in patient stories. I would often joke with my friends and say, well, I actually don't need Netflix or any streaming service because the stories in my office were far more interesting than anything you would see on a streaming service. To me, every patient is like an interesting epic novel. That's how I remember details about patients. It's like reading a great story. And when the session is over, I would close the book, write my notes, and wait until the next session. So that's how I get to remember all of it. And having listened to thousands of stories, there is a certain theme and a certain thread that runs through everything. So I want you to see your life as that great story and consider how that story began. So let's continue your particular story. Would you say that your story began at the moment of your birth, the point in which you came into the world? Or is it at the moment of conception? Did biology begin your story? Was your story first 40 weeks old in the womb of your mother? Or was there a story even before that, before you were born? And what do I mean by that? Were there discussions about you between your parents, your grandparents, even before you were born? That's your story too, you know. So, to effectively find the thread of your story, to see where the challenges truly began, we need to work out where your beginning was. Where's the source? Because that source has clues to many of the things you struggle with today. And you may think, no, this doesn't make sense, but I assure you, I have over hundreds of times seen the thread that comes from even before you were born. And I want to show you that in the series of conversations that I'm going to have with you. How you handle your relationships currently, how you attach and detach to people, all of that goes back to your womb history and your childhood history. So I want to help unpack that by a series of reflection questions as well as cases that I would share with you. Where was the source of your story? Where was the source of your hurt? And how might we heal it? Because if we know the root and we know the source, then you can begin clinical emotional surgery to address the issues that have plagued you your entire life. I want to now tell you about a unique experience that I had a few years ago. I was invited to speak at a women's retreat, and there was probably about 60 or 70 women of all ages attending. And the location was really in a very beautiful part of the city of Durban, where I live, because we have a coastline. And along that coastline is rich vegetation and many sugarcane fields. And this particular retreat was deep in the heart of those fields. So a real oasis, if I could call it, hidden in the heart of it. So it was really interesting. I came there and I knew I wanted to talk about this very topic, about where our stories began. And I began my session by asking the women to explore and start thinking about where and what happened at conception and what happened for the 9 months in the womb of their mothers. As I probed deeper, I gave them some questions to consider. And today, I'd like you to consider these questions and maybe ask people for answers, should you not know some of the answers. So firstly, I got this group of people to answer the question, number 1, how did your father respond to the news that your mother was pregnant? Do you know that for yourself? How did your father answer this? You know, people sometimes tell me, I actually don't know who my father is. And that may sound strange for some of you, but I assure you, many people don't know who the biological father really is. And that hope opens another chapter for exploration and for healing. One of my colleagues once told me that in juvenile detention or in juvenile prison, the majority of young people there actually don't know who their fathers are. And that's a very interesting correlation to see where all these young people ended up. The absent father was their reality. And the person that I'm talking about who gave me these statistics is a psychologist who works in the criminal justice system. So she is someone that truly knows. And we've been talking about what engagement this particular group of young people would need. And that needs a lot of discussion. The other question I'd like you to consider is, what was the emotional state of your mother during pregnancy? Was she anxious? Was she fearful? Was she depressed, isolated? Or was it a time of joy and peace and restfulness, that it was exciting to be pregnant and she was well taken care of? I'd also like you to consider whether you were a planned or unplanned pregnancy. This would really be important, because the response of adults around you would determine your own level of ambivalence or uncertainty or surety. in terms of who you are in the world. The next question: are you a child out of an affair, sexual abuse, premarital sex, or just a so-called mistake? People tell me that all the time. I am a mistake, and I want to clear that up right here up front. There are no mistakes. A child, while biological in inception, is also a divine spiritual gift. So nobody is a mistake, no matter what you have been told. Question number 6. What was the financial circumstances of your parents at the time your mom was pregnant with you? Were you born in an environment of enough, more than enough, or was there absolute scarcity? Were you going to become another mouth to feed? So knowing whether you were born in a time of abundance or lack has the distinct impact on your life journey. The more painful question, number 7, was there talk of abortion when you were conceived? This can have lifelong impacts because abortion would imply a rejection, an abandonment, emotionally and physically of you. And I have seen people struggle with this for the longest time. Were you given up for adoption? And adoption itself has a different life journey. Because when a child is born and given up for adoption, it's actually a time of great pain and silence. There is no celebration. There's no gender reveal party. And people really struggle with this later in life. There's so many gaps in the story that they want fulfilled. And I have dealt with a number of people that have been adopted. And we've had to eventually, later in life, do the investigation and close the story and bring healing in a very different type of way. Question number 8. What was the spiritual condition, if any, of both your parents? Did they come from the same faith, or were they from different belief systems? This in itself can bring a lot of conflict in families, and we can have rushed weddings, faith conversions that are not sustainable and become a source of much resentment. The last question I want you to consider is, what was happening environmentally in your town, village, or country at the time of your birth? You know, we talk now about COVID babies that are more resilient because they were born in a different time. But what was happening in your time? Was there war? Was there famine? Was there migration? Was there a virus? Or was there something like genocide going on? All these things severely impact a child. And I want you to deeply consider these questions. Let's go back now to the retreat that I was telling you about. And what this group of incredibly deep, loving, and attentive women began responding to in terms of all these questions. The truth is, I just started speaking. And it was roundabout within the first 5 minutes when I said, were you a wanted child? Were you born of abuse? Do you know your father? that there was this deep primal crying that happened in this building. There was the screaming, and it reverberated throughout the building and the surrounding area because it was a very quiet place in the middle of these sugarcane fields. And I had heard these sort of screams before in my practice when there's a certain knowing. It's like somebody acknowledging your story. And this time there were cries of longing, and there was cries of relief that somebody saw their hidden pain, like I had given them one more piece of the jigsaw puzzle, the piece that was always missing, the thing that they could never understand about their life story. At this point in time, I had given it a name. And we had to actually pause the retreat as people just were weeping and weeping, leaving the hall and coming back. But acknowledging the source of the pain, knowing the beginning of your story, also becomes the point of beginning healing. And there is much hope for healing if this is your story. So I want to encourage you to go through this session again and sit with someone who knows your story and ask these questions, collate the information, find out about your parents, and your own story will start to make sense. And it will also explain many things that you are struggling with in the current time. So join me as I keep unpacking and looking at this particular part of your story, the beginning, the womb and early childhood history, and its linkages and threads to where you are today. Thank you for listening. I will see you next time.